Good afternoon, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to today's SAP Security Deep Dive webinar session. And this is Purna, and I will be your host for today's webinar. If you have any queries or problems throughout the session, I will be there to help you. You can also continue to post your queries in the chat, which will be addressed in the last 15 minutes of our Q&A session. And Mr. Nalini Kumar, CTO and Director of Increasal Software Services Private Limited, will present today about SAP Security Deep Diving. Everyone is aware that business ERP systems are more vulnerable to cyber attacks. In today's session, we will talk about SAP Security Facts, SAP Security Architecture, SAP Security Elements, SAP Security Best Practices, SAP Security Plan, and Security Roadmap. Now I hand over to the mic to Mr. Nalini Kumar to take this session forward. Mr. Nalini Kumar, over to you.
Thank you, Purna. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you are able to see my screen. If you have any difficulties in viewing my screen, please drop your message in the Q&A section so that our team will assist you in case of any difficulties in terms of hearing me or viewing my screen. Currently, I'm on my agenda screen. So today I would like to speak more about key factors in terms of SAP security. We need to consider the architecture of the same, and what are the different elements that are involved in the SAP security and the best practices, and how you can take it further from here. It's like how you can evaluate your security standards, or the where do you stand exactly, and what are the next steps that you can plan as a roadmap. It's going to be a bit lengthy, but I'm trying to make it as short as possible, 45 minutes. Okay, and last 15 minutes I'm reserving for the Q&A. I'm assuming that I'm audible to everyone. So it's like there are various security facts are published already in the internet. It's like for the Bloomberg or the Fortinet or Business Wire or the Gartner. So look, there are a lot of data breaches already started happening on the SAP systems, whether it can be an insider-based data breach or the external-based data breach. For example, some of the stats, you can see it here, like 64% of the organizations are reported that they are victims of the data breach who are using SAP in the last 24 months or the 2 years of time. Anyway, most of the data threats of these are like insider threat. Insider threat are more for the monetary benefits aspect or the fraud they want to intended to do in the organization, considering the accesses they are having. And also another big threat on the ERP systems is like personal information. Okay, so it's like most private information that we are holding in our ERP systems. Okay, so all our employee personal information, or the customers or the vendors or any stakeholder for the sake. Okay, so all the personal information is a sensitive information, and in Europe and all, there is a GDPR clauses are very strong. If anything goes wrong from the ERP side, there are huge penalty clauses are there. For example, one of the surveys says that most of the companies are paying around 20 million or 4% of their annual turnover as the penalties in the European region. Okay, so this particular webinar is intended to highlight the different areas where we can focus to protect ourselves or protect your SAP environment better. So there are various layers of it's like SAP security doesn't mean that you do everything within SAP. Okay, so there are various layers involved in the overall security architecture. First layer is your infrastructure. Infrastructure are nothing but your servers, data center, and or your cloud infrastructure, whatever it is, where you are hosting your applications. Okay, so in terms of infrastructure, like if they are vulnerable, then there's a good chance that people can get in, or someone can enter in there and they can grab the information. Okay, either physically or digital manner. So the first principle of infrastructure security is like you need to follow the zero trust security architecture. That is nothing but don't believe or don't trust anyone. Just assume that everything is a threat, and on top of it, enable the required permissions or the accesses, assuming this zero trust security architecture. And also, in case of physical data centers, for example, if you're on-premise data centers, or you are the ownership, your data centers are under your ownership, then it is preferable to have the video surveillances, also restricted accesses like biometric based or the face recognition based accesses with the limited access to limited people only. And another important thing is like firmware. This is a highly neglected item in most of the organizations that I came across. Okay, it's like the servers once we bought, the firmware upgrade is not a periodic activity in most of the organizations or the companies. So firmware is also vulnerable to attacks. Okay, so it is always advisable to upgrade the firmwares time to time. Okay, or based on the security information that the hardware provider or the infra provider is releasing, keep on releasing. Another thing is like a disk level encryption. Okay, this is also somehow neglected item in some of the companies. Okay, so it's like it's always better to encrypt the data or that is persisting on your disk, so that if the disk is also lost, if the disk is lost, then also no harm if it is encrypted. If it is not encrypted, there is a huge chance that someone can decode the information from it, or they can extract the information out of it and they can use it for the wrong purposes. And anti-malware solutions, it's like at different layers of infrastructure we can have the anti-malware solutions to be enabled. Intrusion detection system, someone abnormal or the it's like not a right person is entering to your infrastructure or the uh, data center level, there should be some sort of a detection system you can enable. There are various companies are providing this type of options nowadays. Okay, you can utilize one of that and you can enable the alerts on top of it. So the first protection layer should be at your infrastructure level. Then if it is protected, then the next vulnerable area is your network. Okay. So the network is the place from where people try to reach your infrastructure. Okay. So because if we protect our data center from the physical access, then the next step is a network based access will come into the picture. So the network security, that's another most important area, and most of the companies are protecting themselves in the network security, like firewalls like Fortinet, Sonic Wall, or the CyberHome, or the Sophos. Various firewall systems are there, okay, as a threat protection systems or the UTM systems. So those firewalls are going to help at least to track all the packets that are getting into your organization or the data within your network or moving out of your network. Okay, but there are some cases which are not covered by these firewalls, like your local or intranet access. So, for example, inside the thread may not be tracked through your firewall systems. Okay, so there we need to have some more protection mechanisms. And DMZ, that is mainly for demilitarized zone, that is more of separating your internet-based applications or the external exposed applications versus internal-only applications. That should be properly structured. And the network segmentation is also another important thing in terms of your network security. What do you mean by network segmentation? Network segmentation is nothing but within your data center, you need to draw multiple LANs in such a way that not all your SAP landscape systems on the same network segment. For example, you have your SAP production servers and backup server in the same network segment. There is a chance that if any intrusion attack happens on the production server, that also spoil your backup servers. So it's always better to have the separate segmentation for backup, separate segmentation network segment for the administrative systems, separate segmentation for the development quality servers, and separate segmentation for the production, and with the limited access between these network to network communications. So that is always advisable instead of keeping everything in a single network segment. That will at least help you to, if any penetration happens, that will spoil only that particular segment than affecting everything. And nowadays it's most common is like DOS and DDoS. It's like everyone knows about it's like related to it. It's like denial of services attacks, or the these attacks more to consume your resources of your servers. Okay, so like high volume of requests are coming to your servers as a to occupy your resources of the server and making it slow or hang or die. Okay, so these attacks, most of them can be covered by your firewall system, and also there are some separate tools available, okay, to handle DDoS much better. AI based tools or AI based threat management solutions are available, so through which you can protect your SAP applications for DOS and DDoS attacks. And also on top of it, if you are using any Fiori or a web-based exposure from your SAP environment to the internet-based servers or internet-based access, then DDoS must be an item to be considered. Okay, the next one goes to your DNS proxy or NATing. Okay, so it is more related to exposing part of your SAP services through firewall using some specific port or a specific way to the external connectivity. So NATing is the most common practice we do. Okay, right? So that port binding and everything we'll do. There also you need to consider that only required ports you have considered, not everything. And deny all open requests. It's nothing but sometimes we used to, I observed at least personally in some of the companies, like they are using the blanket level of approvals, like not on a specific port, it's a star based permission on a specific IP. So, but it is not advisable, even though they claim that this IP is a trustable IP, but it's not advisable. End of the day, why to open a chance? Okay, so better deny everything and open a specific port and whitelist against an IP. Okay, WAF and UTM, that's the web application firewalls, and VPN security is also another important thing, considering nowadays the remote working culture got increased a lot. So the VPN is playing a crucial role. Okay, so there is a chance that misusing of your employee hardware or the laptop or the system, whatever the device they are using to connect to your network. So better to enable an MFA based VPN access. Okay, so that it will make sure that the right person is accessing the device, considering they are outside your organization. Okay. And the network behavior or anomaly detection, there is another important topic. Okay, nowadays a lot of firewall systems are coming up with the AI based skill set or the AI based algorithms which can detect the anomaly, some sort of a it's like a different behavior they observe compared to the regular patterns. These systems are going to throw the alert so that your network admins or the systems admin can react immediately and try to analyze it and protect if anything is going wrong. The next layer of security is our OS security. So the OS security is nothing but, it's like in the operating system level also there is a possibility. Once the network is cleared, then the next threat will be reached to the OS level, operating system level. So lot of OSs you are seeing that vulnerable to the different types of viruses, and they are keep on releasing security patches. For example, Windows releasing the patches, and the Linux systems are releasing patches, or the Unix, everyone releasing the patches time to time, security patches based on the new vulnerabilities they have identified. So it is always advisable to have the patching up to date on your OS level so that you will be safeguarded from the any attacks that happening through the OS level. And also file permissions, another important thing. Excuse me. So file permissions are nothing but sometimes for troubleshooting during the installation time or during some sort of upgrades or any maintenance activity time, what most of the administrators will do, they will give the blanket permission, 777 permission to the file or read write permission to the files, which is not advisable. Or at least after the troubleshooting is done, they don't revert it back to the proper permissions. For example, your profile files or your instance, it's like any sensitive files which has the settings related to your SAP systems or the database, they should have the authorization or the read write authorization specific to the users only. So it should be always better to audit the file permissions are appropriate or not, sensitive file permissions, and it should not be exposed with the 777 permission across your network. And NFS, that's the most important thing. Okay, it's unavoidable. You need to have a shared file system across your servers. For example, it can be your trans directory, or it can be your profiles directory, or it can be various things. It depends on the system landscape that you are using, or the nature of the connectivity, or nature of the system slicing or the application slicing you are implemented in your organization. So in case of NFS, that there should be a permission mechanism. The folder should be restricted to a specific IP addresses and to a specific usernames only. It's not supposed to. Most of the times, administrator do like a star. That means any IP can access this folder with any username or anonymous usernames, which is not at all advisable. So the all NFS folders should be audited in such a way that they should have the right access from the right systems with the right people only, or right usernames only. Another important thing is access control. Like this is another interesting thing. Okay, so it's like if you observe it carefully, in most of the places, what we do is we put a common password across the systems. Okay, to make it our life simpler, to memorize it easily. So we'll put a very simple password, xyz@123 or something like that, or with the company's small abbreviation of the company @123 or @2023, 22, 22, like that. So which is not an appropriate way to put our passwords, because once the access is granted, then it's easy to crack these type of passwords if some penetration happens to your network. So it's always better to audit your access controls in terms of password strength, also in terms of the permissions they are having. Like root permissions may not be given to everyone, or administrative access should not be given to everyone. If someone has the administrator, or your partner team is logging into your systems, or the support partner, or some other partners, OS partner, anyone, they should have their separate users with the separate level of permissions. Okay, so that's most important thing. Okay, by any chance, if they have a loose control of security in their level, then that will give a big chance some hacker or someone to get into your systems. And logging, it is advisable to enable all type of logging in terms of security and audit logging enabled on our operating system, and log files to be rotated or backed up periodically to a safe storage. in case of anything went wrong, you have a better chance to analyze it and understand the root cause. And antivirus, it's not a least thing, it's a very important item. So most of the Windows systems are vulnerable to the different types of attacks. Their antivirus is a must. Even in Linux, we advise to go for an antivirus applicable to your operating system. So at least that will enable some level of protection, which is going to happen within your if any penetration happen inside OS. Configuration control, okay, that's like, this is more towards the stability of your operating system. Okay, so you should control or have a tracker in terms of any config changes happening at the OS level. Config means it's like in terms of settings of your operating system or some other parameters related to the operating system, shared memory or other aspects. So all those should be well thought through and maintained. It should not be like anyone can get in there and change the configurations and try it out. That will impact your operations or the stability of your production and productive environments. And the firewall, this is another important thing. What is this firewall? We already saw a firewall in the network. Do we really need a firewall at the operating system level? Okay. So my answer is yes. Okay. So because if the network is protected or any breach happens at the network, why should we open a door at the operating system level? Let the operating system have its firewall enabled. Almost every operating system can come up with its own firewall mechanism in which you can define the rules, which all the systems can log in from here, or which IPs can access this particular operating system or the VM or the machine, or which ports can be accessible, like that using these IP tables or the port ranges, all you can give it. So the firewall enablement is must in all your SAP infrastructure. That's the most important thing. But I can see that at least 60 to 70% of the customers are ignoring this one, but it's not a good practice considering the volume of threats happening nowadays. And VAPT, that's like a periodic assessment, vulnerability and penetration testing on your operating system level. If there are threats or if there are some sort of an applications exposed through some different ports, like you have some different multiple applications deployed in the same operating system, maybe there is a possibility that some unwanted ports are getting opened because of that. So this VAPT is going to help you out to identify if there are any unwanted threats possible on your system, so that you can protect from them by applying the remediations. Then it comes the application security. Okay, that is nothing but your SAP applications. Okay, so that can be your SAP NetWeaver, it can be your web dispatcher, it can be your gateway server, it can be there. Nowadays there are n number of SAP applications are there in every organization we are using. Okay, so the important thing for these applications are nothing but first thing is the patching. Okay, the security patching. SAP is keep on releasing the security notes as and when required, as and when they come across some vulnerabilities. Also, they're quarterly or monthly, they are releasing the security reports. Even in your launchpad or the marketplace, you can see that there is a security note style available once you log into SAP portal. So you can keep review the SAP notes applicable, security notes applicable for you, and keep update the patches. Okay, either patches or apply the notes. Okay, and secure code, this is the most important thing. We can protect from operating system, we can protect from application using the patching and all, but the next layer is your programming. Okay, so the coding also plays a critical role or equal role, because in SAP systems we develop a lot of G programs, right? So there is a possibility that the programmer is not so good in the security aspects or in terms of protecting your data. So it's like highly vulnerable that the unwanted data can be exposed to the unwanted people. There's a huge chance. So there should always be a proper mechanism to write a secure code. Also, there is a possibility that they write a possible chances of secure vulnerabilities. Those injections can be exploited by the hackers through RFC calls or anything like that. So secure programming is another important thing, whatever we are developing. And most of the companies nowadays going through the API integrations, like they are exposing their SAP data as an API or a BAPI or a web service or a OData service, various ways we are exposing as a web services to the external systems. So the API security also plays a very crucial role, because if an API is exposed non-securely, or the authentication mechanism not appropriate, and it doesn't have any authorization mechanisms, check mechanisms, then definitely it's going to help the external parties, or the one who has the wrong access to these systems can exploit on your data. And the next thing is like in terms of config of your server, it's like your profile parameters or the security profile parameters or the various settings are there in the SAP application level also. They should also be maintained very proper manner. The change control should be enabled on top of it. And after through thorough scrutinization only, you should enable these changes effective on your productive environments so that you can protect your data. Then the security logging, that is nothing but every system has a provision. SAP has the inbuilt capability of enabling the logging of your security related data. so that you can use this data for the root cause analysis. Okay, and secure communications is another important thing. It's like from SAP, you want to, it's like SAP is not an isolated system anymore. It is connected with many legacy systems or a cloud-based SAP systems or other applications. So any communication happening between the systems over a network layer, all those should go through a secure communication protocols like SSL-based communications, or if it is a FTP-based communication, then go with the SFTP or FTPS mechanism. Okay, so all should go through the secure tunnels only instead of with the open tunnels or the open communication mechanism. That will also help you to protect your network layer data theft between the SAP and your other systems. Authorization checks, you should enable a strong authorization check. SAP has a strong or complex authorization mechanism available. So it is advisable to enable the proper authorization check mechanism. And change control, this is mainly for the stability of your programs. So you should have a change process implemented in your organization, and that should ensure that the right code and the stable and the secured code only move to your productive environments. And the next one is the privileged users. This is also a bit neglected item, I can say. What do you mean by privileged users? Privileged users are nothing but super users, like SAP all authorization users. So might be your internal admin team might be having the privileged users, or might be your partner team or the support partner team might be having the privileged users, or might be some super users might be, or the business users also having these users. So that should be cautiously monitored, and time-bound enablement, you need to have it, because there is no point in leaving these privileged users forever with the respective partners or the respective users. It's not a good idea. So have a documentation saying that, okay, I'm enabling this privileged user for this X partner for this purpose, so that will help you to mitigate or understand the damages if anything happen. Okay, because privileged users can access the data in various ways. They can go to a table and dump the data, or they can open anything in SAP and see it, right? Similarly, password policies, that's another important thing. So it is advisable to have password policies. It's like strong password policies with a password change policy, like every quarterly once or a monthly once or a half yearly once. Those change policies should also be enabled. That would help you to protect from the leftover passwords, old passwords with some unwanted people or the people who left the organization. When you have this rotation of passwords, then at least that will enable them not to access the SAP systems. And also, if possible, you can also enable, SAP has a feature called MAC binding with your username. If you enable that, only that user can access the system, access the SAP from his laptop only, and he cannot share his passwords with someone else. Okay, that also you can use it. Just another level of security you can enable at the application level or SAP login level. And web dispatcher, this is the one where we expose our SAP system to the internet or some other systems through the network. It's a reverse proxy. Okay, so any penetration happens over the network. It's like if you have Fiori apps, or if you have some other BSP applications, or you have something WebDen Pros and all. So this web dispatcher plays a crucial role, or the proxy servers you kept in between plays a crucial role. Okay, so in many cases, I observed that they have the default installation of web dispatcher. Okay, so whatever the SWPM or these or what are the installation tools of SAP they provide, they're just installing it and enabling the default ports, or might be probably they're changing a port number, that's all. But there are various things in terms of security to be enabled within a web dispatcher that's not happening. It might be due to lack of subject, or might be skill or ignorance. Okay, so but it's not advisable, considering web dispatcher is the application which is exposed to the internet or DMZ zone based application. So it is advisable to enable all levels of security aspects, best practices in it, along with the throttle limits. Okay, if in case of any DDoS attacks happening in web dispatcher level, also you can put a request limits on a specific IP addresses, or you can enable the denials also in that. It has its own capabilities. So it is recommended to enable all those security features of web dispatcher to protect better. And the VAPT on application level also, I recommend to go for the VAPT periodically. Okay, the next layer is a data layer. Okay, that's it's like once the application is protected, then there is a possibility that the database can also be attacked. Okay, from the database also, there is a possibility to extract the data out and take out. Okay, so for that purpose, it's like database level also there are security vulnerabilities. Okay, through which network level penetrations can happen. Considering that purpose, DB patching, we need to keep check the DB patching periodically, and apply the DB patches. Okay, in case of HANA level patches, HANA keep on release the patches related to security as well as performance and all. So it is advisable to apply the patches based on the applicability to you and also based on the scenario. And also it is required, it is advisable to have the secure communication. Okay, this is another thing also I observed commonly, that the communication between DB versus application is a non-secure communication. And most of the base administration leave it as a non-SSL communication, but it is advisable to enable it as a SSL based communication between your application and your DB. Okay, don't go with the non-SSL application, non-SSL communication. And data at rest encryption, this is a big topic. Okay, so that's like your database is, in case of HANA, it's an in-memory database along with the persistence on the disk. Okay, so whatever the data that is residing on your disk or the persistent layer, that should be encrypted, so that if any theft happens related to the disk, or in case of scrapping your hardware, those hard disks might be moved out, and by any chance if it has a wrong people or wrong team got an access to it, they can't exploit it if you have the encryption enabled on those. Okay, you know it by this time already. There are many data recovery softwares available. Each byte by byte it can take out of your disk, even though it's a 10-year-old, 20-year-old. Okay, considering that data at rest encryption is highly recommended in the current scenario of the security aspects. And also, if you are keeping some backups in your external drives or the NAS drives or somewhere, there also it is highly recommended to go with the data at rest encryption. Backups also be encrypted and stored properly. And data in transit, there is nothing but SSL encryption and logging. Enable all security logging onto your database level and authorizations. Nowadays, databases also coming up with the service-based architecture. For example, HANA has an extended services or HANA Access. Like database works as a backendless. That means without an application layer, your mobile apps or the web apps can directly interact with the database. In those cases, it's highly recommended that you have the proper roles and authorizations are defined to make sure that your database is highly protected. And non-protective system data protection. This is also a highly neglected item. What does this mean? So it's like in most of the cases, we copy production data into quality servers or a test client in the development server, client copy or a backup restore, whatever the mechanism you name it. But the whole data of a production is coming to these underlying systems like development or quality in a way or other way. Okay, so there we generally don't look too much about the authorizations, or we don't look too much about the security aspects. We generally have a overlook on that. But it's as good as, like, even though it's a 3 months old backup, but still the data of your company for years and years of data is there in those systems. It can be sensitive data of your employees, it can be sensitive data of payroll, it can be your order book, or it can be your financials. Everything is there in that. So that's not recommended. It's just like it is recommended to have a security framework built on your development and quality servers also, and keep a monitoring or auditing on them as well. That's highly recommended if you are copying your productive data periodically to your test systems. Information classification and handling. This is another level. It's like you can classify your information and it's like we cannot focus with high sensitivity on the whole data. So you can classify your data into the high sensitive data, low sensitive, okay. That category you can do it. And based on that, you can define your strategy to protect your data security at the database layer or the different layers involved we discussed so far. The last one is operational security. Okay. So many people feel that it's not part of security, but security means it's protecting your operations as well in terms of continuity, business continuity. Okay, so for operation security, it's most important that you should plan your business continuity approaches, like your HADR, like you need to have the high available environment or the disaster recovery environment based on your RTO, RPO policies depending on your organization. And also you need to perform to make sure that operations are safe and secure and stable. You need to perform the security assessments periodically, and based on that assessments, apply the remediations. Also segregation of duties. Okay, this is also a periodic audit item. Okay, so because your employees keep changing their roles, right? Someone might be promoted, someone left the company, some new joinee came. So many things will happen eventually over the period of time in the organization. So SOD is not like a one-time activity, it's a periodic activity. You need to keep assess your SODs, segregation of duties periodically, and see if there are any gaps in it. Security scanning and logging and monitoring, it's more like enable the security logging. It's like enable the continuous monitoring on your security aspects of your SAP applications, and react based on the observations. And this is like backups and restore tests. This is more like most of the companies do the backups, but restore test happens. It's like maybe quarterly ones or half yearly ones or yearly ones. But it is recommendable to have shorter period of restore tests so that you will get a confidence on your backups. In case of your DRHA fails, also these backups are going to be our last resort to make our applications of the business run by depending on them. And we need to keep apply the patching and DR drills. You need to plan DR drills periodically to ensure that your operations are safe enough and securely planned. So I'll quickly jump on to the next section. Okay. This is more towards the SAP security elements. Okay. From here, I'll take another 10-15 minutes to quickly get into the Q&A. So it's like already these points we have discussed. Okay, one of the key security element in your SAP applications is roles and authorizations and access control. Okay, that's more related to your SOD activities and also super user activities like we have discussed, like SAP all or SAP new roles. Okay, emergency firefighter IDs and authorization exceptions management. Sometimes the business user comes to you and asks that I need additional authorization for temporarily a day or two, but you don't record and you enable those authorization and you forget. That means forever that user used to have those exceptions enabled, right? So those type of exceptions to be properly managed. And also you need to keep an eye on the table level data access monitoring. Someone is accessing your table level data. You should have a keep an eye why they are accessing. Are they right for people to access it or not, including your support partners. And also debug level changes. If someone is doing some changes through debug in your product environment, there is a way to find it out. So you keep an eye that any such bad things are happening in your system. And also keep a note of all those incidents that are happening. The next one is the patch management. We already discussed this. We keep on apply the patches periodically. And the transaction monitoring, this is the important thing. It's like most of the nowadays, lot of API integrations are happening in our organizations. So it's like a lot of it's like even including your user management also can be exposed through BAPI or APIs. So if at all, if such thing happening in your organization using a central user management mechanism or something like that, if that API got exploited, then there is a possibility that the penetrators can just use that API and create a dummy user, and they can use that dummy user to access all other application data or the business data and exploit it. So it is always advisable to have the user activity monitoring. Is that right user is doing the right job or not? So if any abnormal behavior is observed, we need to react immediately. And code security, this is a bit neglected item. Okay. So the ABAP, but it's more related to the ABAP aspect. Okay, there are many tools like code vulnerability analyzer is given by SAP. Okay, so it's strongly recommendable that make it as a practice or a mandatory check in your organization, asking your developers or the support vendors to run this report, code vulnerability analyzer, on top of every deliverable they are doing or that is supposed to be moved to the productive environments. Okay. So that will help you to protect at least whatever the basic scanning happens. If it comes across, it will throw some sort of errors or warnings that should be rectified before they move to the production itself. System settings. Okay, this is like RJ10 settings or the operating system level setting, DB parameters. Okay, so we should make sure that everything is documented and well tested in the dev quality before making any changes dynamically in the productive environment. Okay, in case of emergencies, we do that, but it's not advisable. It's a best practice wise. First, try to evaluate the impact and then do it. That will help you to protect your operational security. And also, sometimes we open the productive clients for some purpose, unavoidable situations, and make sure that that is not open, that is immediately locked after the work is done. And also maintain a tracker in such a way that, okay, this time to this time, productive client is open for this purpose. So that would help you to any you want to analyze anything post to the incident happens, these logs are going to help you out to understand where exactly it was happened or why exactly it was happened. And API configurations. Okay, this is for the mainly for the gateway consultants. Okay, or SAP ICM framework. Okay, so SAP gateway has its own SAP internal firewall. Okay, so that is for the application level firewall we call it. Okay, there also you can whitelist the IPs, reginfo and secinfo. These are the parameters like entries you can maintain where you can authorize which all the IP addresses can interact with this gateway or which all the ports can be accessible through this gateway, and also various settings are there. So in some cases, basis administrators marked as a star. Star means everyone can access it. So ideally, it should not be like that. Only the whitelisted applications should access this gateway and access the needful data, so that you can minimize the threat to very lower extent. Okay, disable remote login functionality in RFC configuration in SM15 and RFCs. If you enable the remote login or the dialog user logins, that is also going to create a big threat. So it is advisable to do that. And web dispatcher to restrict endpoint access. Like in the web dispatchers, it was observed sometimes like slash star. That means after that slash, every endpoint will be accessible through that web dispatcher, but it's not advisable. We need to whitelist the URL patterns only applicable for the required application that we are exposing through SAP. So that only those 3-4 applications, 10 applications, 20 applications, those endpoints only be tracked through exposed to web dispatcher. If anything coming beyond it, or if any type of fuzzy logic based pattern generation attacks are happening, they also web dispatcher will simply deny, because that pattern is not whitelisted to access or forwarded to the backend systems. And this one is like more towards your data security aspects, okay, in terms of who is accessing what, and access logs, okay, read access logs. If someone accesses some sensitive data, might be on payroll or the employee data, so in SAP there is a mechanism you can identify it. There is a T code called SRAL manager. That is nothing but the access log manager. Through here you can see that which person accessed what data and when. Okay, that will also, you keep an eye on this particular T code periodically, so that you can protect, you can also at least govern who are doing some wrong practices or accessing the sensitive data. So now next thing is like how we can plan from here in terms of your SAP security. Okay, so it is more towards understand your SAP security settings first. Okay, evaluate, you can just, it's like audit the current systems, whatever are there, and in terms of settings that are enabled. And also you need to perform some trainings to your teams to give the awareness that what are the security precautions are to be taken and everything. So then it's like perform the one-time settings and the one-time setup of the security. Then you can, after that, the second step is a emergency procedure. This is like a handling the panic situations. Like these cyber security attacks or the threats won't come by saying, right? So we should be prepared if at all something comes. So for that, we need to define some standard operating procedures. If something happens wrong in terms of network layer penetration or the data layer penetration, whatever the layers, the bad thing is happened, define some sort of a small protocol in such a way that users can immediately disable the, revoke the accesses and control the damage. Okay, so this is the emergency procedures you need to define. And it's a periodic reviews, you need to have it, conduct housekeeping and reviews. It's not a one-time activity. As I said, the security auditing or the security assessment should happen periodically. It can be half yearly, quarterly, or on a yearly basis. You need to define the periodicity based on the risk levels that your organizational systems are having. Okay, so considering that, so keep monitor and observe and perform assessments and make the required fixes and review periodically. And also the another important thing is like it's like whatever the considering the SAP's complexity and vastness, it will be very hard to handle all security aspects through Excels or the inbuilt tools of SAP. So if required, don't hesitate to appoint some of the strong security tools which work closely with SAP, like SAP GRC tool, or there are various other tools are available to govern your SAP's access management or SAP SOD activities. And also in terms of your network layer security, various security tools are there. So try to deploy those security tools and make sure that you utilize the right tool to simplify your job of protecting your systems from the complexity that you are feeling. The next one is the security roadmap. So the same thing we have discussed. First, you perform your review in terms of your security aspects. What all the possibilities, like you review your firewall system, you review your whole system landscape, like what all the systems interacting with which all systems, like you draw a system landscape diagram and communication diagram on top of it, and the network topology on top of it, and understand which systems are communicating with which systems. Then you define your security strategy in terms of how you want to realign the security on your landscape to in terms of improvement or a betterment. And then the next step is like you define your policies and frameworks on top of it, so that the next generation or the next level people also follow these policies or the documentation that you have performed whenever they are adding new systems or making any changes related to with respect to the security aspects. Okay, So these policies or frameworks are nothing but considering these are all the different vulnerabilities of the security aspects we need to consider, like penetration testings or security monitoring or social engineering. That's predominantly happening nowadays, the social engineering through phishing, excuse me, through phishing or through pretending like they are your employee and seeking the information from some of your employees and all. Okay. So, and also you keep performing your application whitelisting or the hardening activities and all. So the review process, okay. So this is nothing but what we have discussed. Okay, so I'll take 5 more minutes. Okay, before we'll get into the Q&A. Okay, this will quickly highlight you that what are the next steps you can perform, or maybe a takeaways of action items. Okay, from this webinar. Okay, so it's recommended that the list. It's like, first of all, prepare the list of your DC assets. DC means data center assets. Okay, and the applications involved in each infrastructure or the DC asset, and system landscape diagram, and on top of it, document security policies, malware protection review on each DC asset, like whether the antivirus is installed or not installed, required, not required, and what type of protection is there on top of that particular DC asset. And network segmentation review, whether you want to keep backups and admins, and depends on the nature of that particular DC asset, whether it comes under the which network segment. Okay, so and access control review. Okay, so different layers of access like VPN level, local network, OS, application level, various access are there. So review those. Okay, list down and review of default users of applications. Okay, this is another important thing. Okay, so because most of the times we leave those default user like DDIC user or basis user, there are very standard SAP users are there, or sometimes it's a DB level. DB also has its own users, right? Default users that come along with the installation. And so review those passwords and how we have protected them. In case of OS, also some default users will be created, whether they are secure enough or not. Review that part of the user versus passwords and all. And review ports required. So as I said, it's like no point, and even though they are the systems within the data center communicating each other, it's not advisable to open all the ports between all the VMs or all the servers. So better to review the ports. Suppose if it's a database server accesses requires only specific set of ports. If it is an application server, that requires only specific set of ports to communicate with the message server or with the database server and all, right? So you need to whitelist those ports only when they are communicating with the it's like supporting VMs or the systems in the landscape. And firmware version tracking and all, and perform VAPT and all. It's like one time you can perform. And also the backup strategy and the RPO, RTO, if it's not defined, you define your RPO and RTO process, RTO timelines. Accordingly, you will reverse analyze whether your backup strategy is going to help you to recover. It's like achieve the RPO, RTO, or your DR strategy is going to help you in that or not. Okay, so who are accessing external parties or external systems are interacting with your DC, that also review it. And also try to assess that where exactly the possible threats that can enter into your organization. And this super privileges we already discussed. And communication, non-SSL communications, if there are anyone, you need to analyze them. Okay, once you do this whole analysis stuff, this activities, once you review it, then on top of it, you can define your strategy. Okay, with respect to each of these items. So the follow the approach, we strongly recommend deny by default, like block all inbound, outbound traffic that has not been expressly permitted by firewall policy. So deny by default and open whatever is required only. Okay, so that means no blanket port openings. And patching and upgrade strategy, antivirus should go through the real-time patching process, because the vulnerabilities of the antivirus patches will keep on released by these antivirus providers. So your antivirus server should push these clients with the latest patches. Firmwares on demand basis or the quarterly basis, you need to check the applicability of upgrades. Operating system, either quarterly or annual version upgrades. Nowadays there's a frequent discontinuity of the, it's like earlier it used to be 4 to 5 years of life cycle of one operating system version, but nowadays it's hardly one and a half year or 2 years maximum. So considering that, periodically or quarterly once, audit the operating system and the security patches applicable, and also version upgrades applicable, and keep upgrade your operating system to the latest version or near latest version, which are compatible with your DB version and the application versions. Kernel upgrades, this is also another important thing. This also helps you to protect your SAP application better. You need to have a quarterly based kernel upgrades. Security notes, it can be on demand based on the security applicability to your organization, or you can plan at least monthly once. Ask your basis administrator to log into SAP Launchpad or the SAP Me portal and get the latest security notes released and identify which are applicable. Then decide the action plan, apply in development quality, and analyze it. If everything okay, it's like apply that patch, apply the required notes in the production as well. Okay, DB patches also we can go. There is no much harm after HANA. The DB patches are very smooth and not creating much hamper. And applying patches also very easy through HANA Studio or the HANA Cockpit. SAP application version upgrades. This depends on the need or the statutory or the security vulnerabilities. So network security strategy is like more, don't club your internet and non-internet based applications. Don't club your backup devices and the SAP servers in the same segment. Okay. And OS level is recommended to enable the OS level IP tables and firewalls at all levels, and only HTTPS communication. And don't use default ports. I forgot to tell you this point in the earlier slides. Like when you are installing any FTP servers or the web, it's like HTTP based applications through web dispatch or anything. So it is always advisable to have. It is not to use the default ports, because default ports are known to the common world or the global hackers. They can easily exploit on top of them. So better to go with the some pseudo ports or the new different ports other than the default ports. Disable port scanning, ping, etc. on your firewall level or the wherever it's applicable, so that you can at least protect somehow. Backup strategy is like, it can be a 3-to-1 backup strategy. We recommend. Okay, so one copy can be within your premise or within your data center level. One copy can be at your outside your data center, can be in your DR site or somewhere else or at your plant level. And one copy we recommend to go with the cloud storage, because the cloud is more secure, as well as it has an data protection is very high in terms of the availability. They are giving a SLA of 99.99% in terms of the it's like whatever we store there, we can get it back. Okay, the disk corruption or everything can be handled by them. So one backup, better to start using these AWS S3 buckets or the GC drive or the OneDrive by Microsoft, or one of these options, and keep plan there. Redo logs also we need to keep maintain as per your RTO and RPO plan. Encrypted backups is another important thing. Make sure that all your backups are encrypted, so that in any worst case, if the backups are in the wrong hands, they cannot exploit anything out of it because they are encrypted. And keep periodically perform your backup restore tests. And in terms of your database level or data security, we already discussed data at rest encrypted. It is a must, and all transits should be SSL communications. And firefighter ID management, super privileges. So don't open super privileges for all the time, and just maintain a record and open it as and when required, along with the incident or the note against that. Password protection or the password for any sensitive attachments. For example, you are sending a payslip from your SAP or some other sensitive data from your SAP, then make it as a practice to encrypt the attachments with the password protection. Okay, so only the right party can see the data. Why? Because in SAP also the admins have the access to various places from where they can access all this data and see it. So to protect from various levels of data breach, so it is advisable to have the password protected attachments. And periodically review your SODs, segregation of duties, roles, and authorization framework, and plan the needful corrections. Mainly because the people keep progress in their roles, like promoted to the next level, or the new hire came, or some new position got created in the organization. So in various cases, the SODs will be disturbed. So we need to periodically audit that. And maximum possible extent, enable the MFA at all the places to protect ourselves from the internet-based threats or insider threats. So operational security, this one already we have discussed, so I'm quickly moving on. Okay, so I'm moving to the Q&A session. So please drop your queries in the whatever the queries that you are having in the Q&A section, so that I'll try to address as much as possible. And also, just to give an update, we have a next webinar on May 10th. Okay, it is on Rise with SAP overview, because whole SAP world is taking direction towards rise with SAP concept in terms of their S4 strategy or the future strategy of their SAP landscape. So we thought of giving an overview session on top of it so that you can plan better your future SAP roadmap. Okay, so we'll send an invitation soon. So please feel free to join there. And meanwhile, I will address your queries. Okay, so one of our participant has asked a query saying that is it advisable to perform frequent patching to the SAP environment? Okay, in a way, yes. In a way, no. It depends on the sensitivity of that patch. Okay. For example, if it is a security related and our systems are vulnerable to it, or your business scenario is vulnerable to it, in that case, it is advisable to perform the security patches, even though it's a daily basis or a weekly basis. Okay. But if that patch is not applicable to you and you are not using that particular use case of SAP, then you can park it for a while and you can consider it as part of the maybe an annual patching or the half yearly patchings. Hope I answered your query. Okay. I can see one more question. It is saying that how to protect SAP Web Dispatcher from internet-based threats. Yeah, I already explained as part of the earlier slides. Okay, so SAP Web Dispatcher is the most vulnerable area because it is internet exposed, and many internet-based threats can land with the Web Dispatcher. If it is not protected well, they automatically propagate back to your gateway server or to your SAP backend servers. Then if it is a DOS attack, then if Web Dispatcher is not stopping it or your firewall is not protecting it, then your SAP servers will be down because of the heavy resource consumption or not available to the other one. So considering that Web Dispatcher has many security options available, there is a good wiki from the SAP own team. They have published it on the Web Dispatcher security topic. Okay, so probably I will share across in the thanks note whatever we are going to send in the post to this webinar. I'll include that. That might be helpful to review your security aspects of Web Dispatcher. Might be like you can put your throttle limits in terms of number of requests per minute from a particular IP, or it can be like is it open for all the endpoints? It's like you can mention only the required endpoints. Suppose you are using only 10 Fiori apps with a specific need. So those 10 Fiori apps related endpoints or related underlying accesses only you whitelist over there instead of opening up all the endpoints or the blanket endpoints. Okay. So is it recommended to install the antivirus for SAP applications for Linux or Windows? Okay. So for Windows, definitely yes is my answer because Windows are more vulnerable towards ransomware or the other attacks. Okay, Trojan or different types of attacks that are happening nowadays. Okay, so for Windows level, it is strongly advisable. And for Linux, we recommend still okay up to some extent. It's a choice of the customer, but if possible, we recommend to install the Linux level also the antivirus software to enable the extra level of protection. But only thing is you might see some inconvenience sometimes in terms of some ports, unwanted ports are blocked, and your applications might be stopped because of that. But that's a one-time troubleshooting. If you troubleshoot and clear it out, then after that you are safe. And also, it's like another thing I forgot to mention. Okay, just to add, by the time I get another question, I would like to add that point as well. It's like nowadays we are using a lot of remote assistance tools like AnyDesk, TeamViewer, and many other tools we are using it. But don't never use those tools directly deployed in your SAP systems or in your admin systems. What will happen is these admin systems or your SAP servers are accessible to your applications. There's a high possibility of ransomware attack through these. So that is also one cautious item I would like to highlight. Can you scroll it down? I think there's one more question at the end. What about the SAP router string security? Okay, so SAP router also there are specific ports only you are going to open with the IP whitelisting, right? So in the router table you can put the IP and which port and what is the forwarding for to which IP it should be forwarded. And at the firewall level, okay, so SAP, for example, Indian customers that will be the SAP Singapore IP will come. So that Singapore IP only should be enabled in your firewall. Okay, in your network firewall like 14.8 or the Sonic, whatever the entry point of your internet or ISP binded firewall, there you mention only that particular IPs of SAP to enable the inbound communications on a specific port. That will help you to protect 100% because SAP servers are protected from their side in a very well manner, so the threat can be very less or minimized. Similarly, for the outgoing connections also, you can open only the required ports 329, or there are few ports are available, if I'm not wrong. So those ports, if you open those only instead of the star, then I think your SAP router also well protected. But don't keep your SAP router directly in your SAP servers. Better to keep it as an isolated one in the DFZ zone, separate VM. So we have 5 more minutes. If you have any more questions, please drop in Q&A, and I would be more than happy to answer your questions. Okay, I'll wait for a couple of more minutes. Okay, if no questions, we'll wind up the session. I hope you enjoyed the session and you have a good takeaway from this one. Okay, so I try to, it's a huge topic, but I try to make it as crisp as possible in this one. For example, I explained the multi-layer security architecture, right? So each layer has its own, uh, uh, it's like each layer itself will require a lot of time to understand and plan your security protection in those areas. For example, in the infra level, or it can be network level, or it can be OS level. So each area requires its own expertise and its own detailed presentation. We can just like one webinar topic, I can say. But I try to give you the whole overview and how you can plan your SAP roadmap. That's what I tried in this presentation. So okay then, so we don't hear any more questions. So I think there is one question. Okay. What precautions will take if we API integrates in SAP applications? Okay, it depends on inbound or outgoing API. Okay, and also it depends on the technology you are using. Through SAP Gateway, you are doing OData services you are exposing outside. In that case, Gateway has its own security option like SecInfo, Reginfo I explained, right? So that one thing you can use it. In case you are directly exposing your ECC through SOA framework or the SYA framework, then you need to enable it's like you need to have some IP whitelisting or some sort of a restriction you need to enable in terms of whether the request is coming from the right IP address or not. In the any payload request header, you can track the IP address. So you can have the whitelisted IPs exclusively maintained at your G tables. Also, you can track it. That's a one way. Or SAP ICM also has some level of protection in terms of whitelisting your incoming requests. Okay, in case of outgoing, no much problems. But in case of outgoing, also open only the outgoing ports than the incoming ones. In case of incoming, you need to have the at each layer of security, and the firewall level might be doing the natting. So don't do natting on the default ports. Put a specific ports, and if any denials are coming on the non-specific port, then you need to track it and understand if any attacks are happening. So within API, you need to have the user authentications. User authentication in terms of that the user is really authorized user to access this data or not, and you enable the you should ask your developer or the technical developer to consider the it's like in terms of security analysis in terms of the authorizations that user is trying to access, or they can enable the authorization objects or the authorization scanning in the code level. If the username they are using is not allowed, they can deny from there itself. Yes, can you please scroll it down? Is it allow SAP any issue with license part? It depends on the use case. Ideally, direct API integrations you want to use, there is a separate license agreement from SAP. You need to use that. Okay. So the regular EULA don't accept direct API integrations, incoming calls. Like suppose through API you want to create sales orders or the billing or do purchase orders or the production orders within SAP, then it's a license violation. But there are workarounds or the alternatives that SAP recommends. Once we follow through that, then it's okay. Might be true if you go through the IDOC channel, no issues, or if you go through the batch mode, no issues, or if you go with the API model, then it's like there is for API usage also there is a separate license available. Okay, it's a volume based license. Through that, if that license you have taken, then it's allowed, no issues. I answered your query. Okay. So great. I think you have some good takeaways from this webinar and you enjoyed it. So thank you very much for your time and participating in this webinar session. And we'd love to see you in our future webinars as well. Have a nice evening, and I would like to say goodbye to all. Thank you once again.